I think you're a good comedian. I think your lectures are boring. Let me ask you a question on the news.
Now, this is theater. I mean, it's obvious. How old are you?
35.
And you wear a bow tie.
Yeah, I do. I do.
So this...
Here you go, Mexican racist. You're always going to be a Mexican. You'll never be white. You know that, right? You'll never be white, which is what you really want to be.
There you go, dear.
White.
Have a good day.
You want to be white so bad.
I do commend Lynn Cheney for her courage.
And I think that the way that our new president is handling things is a very good way, and we would not have gone to this if it were still the last president.
Really? That's hard to believe, because the last president was saying, I want every kid back in school.
Ooh, go get him, Kilmeade. Don't take no guff from no 12-year-old. Brian Kilmeade letting the kid have it, not taking it today on Fox News. They had a panel of 12-year-olds, really a fluff segment about getting back to school, and the kid went off course, and Kilmeade set him straight. He was not going to let this kid run away with a talking point. Not on his watch.
I agree with
How
Kilmeade.
close are you to getting back in the room? What do you miss most about not being in school?
I miss most, obviously, seeing my friends and all the after-school activities that I've done, and I think that we're very, very close getting back to school, and I think that the way that our new president is handling things is a very good way, and we would not have gone to this if it were still the last president.
Really? That's hard to believe, because the last president was saying, I want every kid back in school. Lily, for you?
Yeah, oh, really? Really, kid? How about you never see your friends again? How about that? Kilmeade pushes the kid around. Come on, Alice. Have some humanity. You know, it's a fluff segment. You have some know-nothing kid on there.
He's inserting politics into the question. Into the answer to the question.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just supposed, like you said, it's supposed to be a fluff segment about going back to school, and he's using it as an opportunity to bash Trump.
But that's fine, Alice. This isn't Jim Carville doing that. This is some 12-year-old. This kid doesn't know anything. He's an idiot kid. He doesn't know anything. He's a kid.
You're supposed to just let that slide.
I guarantee if he said, well, I'm breaking warp speed is why we got here, Kilmeade would have no problem with that. But Kilmeade treats a kid like he's
that's because that's true.
He's a political opponent. Well, that's fine. I mean, people have seen here themselves. You abuse our own children. They will not be surprised at all that you are a big fan of this.
I don't mind it.
This is not the first time. Well, good. Then you'll like this, Alice. Then you'll like this, Alice. This is Kilmeade a couple of years ago, when they've got a little, 3-year-old who throws baskets. This wonderkind kid was making basketball throws. Kilmeade was getting the balls.
Not at a real basketball basket, just a short little one.
Right. So Kilmeade's there to help out, and passes the ball to the kid very firmly at his head.
Superstar! You can't teach that! Actually, his dad, Joe, did.
What could come out
Hey, you're a machine! You're a machine! How do you stop this? Oops, I'm sorry. That's how
the ball caroms off the kid's head as Kilmeade passes it with quite a velocity.
Stop it, Brian! I'm sorry. Oh, my God.
Yep.
See, that's Jordan rules right there. That's what happened. He's going to face that when he plays ball.
Now the kid has burst into tears, and they've got to go to break so they can get some emergency rhinoplasty done.
I don't believe it. All right. We'll be right back.
And Alice,
we'll see how tight
smiling and laughing, hearing it.
Sorry, Dad.
The wailing of the kid. And Alice Shattuck, watch this, just enjoys every second of it. You're a sick bastard, Alice, I got to say. But
I don't mind. If kids are going to go on Fox News,
they better be prepared to bleed.
If you're going to go on the news and you're going to knock Trump, then be prepared for somebody to get some pushback on your comments. I don't care if you're 12 years old or 100 years old.
You know what? Maybe a bowling ball to the head, whatever it takes to shut you up, kid. Come on to my set and try to get baskets in front of me or say or opine on an opinion show. How dare you, kid? Well, that is Alice, the cruel Alice Shattuck.
Oh, how cute. The kids all love Joe Biden. Adorable, says Tom Shattuck. Does your 8-year-old woke, do you have any fun stories about their cute political opinions about Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
My child literally was shaking when our BG died. Ginsburg died, yes.
Yeah.
And, maybe one of the reasons he was shaking is that you were making celebratory mimosas at 8 in the morning so thrilled that the old coot had shed her mortar coil.
That is not true.
That is what you said.
As a matter of
that
fact,
happened.
my reaction to finding out Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away is live on our show. You can go back and find it from September, so you can
just
see
take
that
my
Tom
word.
Shattuck is lying here.
Don't believe this woman, this Wiccan who I live with.
I'm not a Wiccan. Jeez, that is slanderous.
That is indeed. I'm sorry about that. Ooh,
what?
Now, my friend just sent me a picture of a bottle of vodka, a White Claw, and a glass of ice, and said, F it, it's Thursday after all. Of course, it's not technically, but, I guess that's the joke, right? So, what we want to talk to you about is this. We had a discussion about the Indian Santorum saying his thing yesterday.
We birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there's nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, that there isn't much Native American culture in American culture.
Right. So we talked about what we would like to speak to a Native American about this, and so we spoke to Dawn Duncan, and she is with the Mass Center for Native American Awareness. I can tell you it was a surprising conversation, and we'll get to that in a few, but we've got a whole bunch of stuff to get to first. Okay. Where shall we start? Well, for some reason today, Tucker Carlson is trending again because the media is dedicated to hating Tucker Carlson, and they've unearthed the Jon Stewart interview with Tucker Carlson. Now, Jon Stewart is the former Comedy Central Daily Show host. He is a talentless know-nothing. He always has been. He is not good at anything. He had some good writers, but really the show was never that good. He's a talentless hack. I did write about it. I tweeted about my writing about it. Mm-hmm. He would play this game where he'd act really serious and then jump right into comedy. And then if you called him on an issue, he'd say, lighten up. And then you'd say, well, okay, I guess we'll be lighten up. And he'll say, this is serious. You're making him up. He was always
Which, by the way, is the argument that Tucker Carlson and Fox News have now used in court about the Tucker Carlson show when they've been taken to court about it, is that it's an entertainment show. So, you tweeted this earlier today I think it was from Jerry Dunleavy on Twitter, saying that essentially this whole clown nose on, clown nose off thing that Jon Stewart did, where it's just an entertainment show, it's just funny. That is a big part of the news environment you see today for everybody, including Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson was on Crossfire a serious news pundit.
Yes.
And now, and you've said this, and I mean it as a compliment to Tucker, but the Tucker Carlson show is a comedic enterprise.
Yes, absolutely, and it's based in arguable facts, and it's based on analysis.
As the Daily Show was.
Well, right, exactly. So here
this form of news entertainment is something that Jon Stewart is in a sense responsible for creating.
But he absolutely, anytime Jon Stewart destroyed a generation of young people with his dumb, empty-headed propaganda. And the media fawned all over him. Look, we're minting new young progressives, yay! And it was always a lie. The guy was always thin gruel and never convincing. Not a good thinker. Never was. But one of the famous things was the famous Crossfire thing where he went on Crossfire. It was full of Jon Stewart's audience, and he went on to slap around Tucker Carlson and Paul Begala to put them in their place. Now watch the substance of the argument here.
Mm-hmm. And the reason we're talking about this is we're not
trending.
obsessed with Jon Stewart, but because everybody on the left is so obsessed with Tucker Carlson, they just can't let it go. And because they're all so incompetent and unfunny that they can't think of any good hits on Tucker, they've now dredged up the Jon Stewart hit on Tucker from whatever this was, 2005.
Yeah, and so he and Begala and Tucker Carlson had Jon Stewart on ostensibly to do some light comedy.
Right.
But Stewart decided to use it to put on suddenly dress as a militant paramilitary, assaulter, and then slip back into his clown suit when it suited him.
I think you're a good comedian. I think your lectures are boring. Let me ask you a question on the news.
Now, this is theater. It's obvious. How old are you?
35.
And you wear a bow tie.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Awesome. That's great. You're teaching millennials that you can just dunk on somebody, and that's all you have to do. That's debate. You wear a bow tie. Yeah, the audience screams. Yeah, the audience screams. Raw, idiot frat bros, if that's who. I don't know. I was not a watcher of the show. I only saw clips of the show. I remember Tucker before this show. I remember Jon Stewart before the show, and he sucked. He had a show before this on MTV, and he sucked.
This is.
No, I know.
So
You're right. No, let me just go. No, come on.
And listen, I'm not suggesting that you're not a smart guy, because those are not easy to tie. But the thing is that you're doing theater when you should be doing debate.
Now he's got his serious thinker hat on.
Which would be great.
No, it's
not honest. What you do is not honest. What you do is partisan hackery. And I'll tell you why I know
John Kerry
it.
on your show, and you sniff his throne, and you're accusing us of partisan hackery?
Absolutely.
You've got to be kidding, man.
You're on CNN. The show that leads into me is puppets making crank phone calls.
Here's Jon Stewart now hiding as, I'm just a comedy show. I'm just a comedy show with John Kerry, He's now saying, no, I'm just theater too. I'm just theater. Hiding behind that.
What is wrong with you?
Well, I'm just saying, there's no reason for you, when you have this marvelous opportunity not to be the guy's butt boy, to go ahead and be his butt boy.
Yes,
God, it's embarrassing.
I was absolutely his butt boy. I was so far. You would not believe what he ate 2 weeks ago.
No, Jon Stewart, debate him on the merits. Debate whether or not you were flacking for John Kerry, using your show, your theater comedy show, to prop up a candidate. Because if you were doing that, then you're not a theater show, then you were an apparatchik. So if you were, then debate it. Rather than throw these fifth-rate comedy jabs at Tucker Carlson, say something. Stand up, you goddamn twerp, and say something.
The interesting thing that I have is you have a responsibility to the public discourse, and you fail
need to get a job at a journalism
miserably.
school, I think.
You need to go to one. The thing that I want to say is,
ooh, man. It's interesting how funny Jon Stewart is when his writers aren't around.
you have people on for just knee-jerk, reactionary talk.
Wait, I thought you were going to be funny.
Rather than what Jon Stewart does is reactionary dunking during the Daily Show, showing how stupid the Republicans are and how dumb Sarah Palin is and how old John McCain is. Dunk, 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 dunk. Reactions. You see, as he reinforces into idiot 23-year-olds that Sarah Palin's just some dumb broad who has no reason, no right to be in politics. She's so stupid with her stupid family. They're stupid. You get it, generations? You get it? This guy is this guy is trash.
Come on, be funny.
No, I'm not going to be your monkey.
Well, you said you are a monkey. You said that there were prank calling Muppets before you. That's what you are.
Go ahead. I watch your show every day, and it kills me.
I can tell you love it.
It's so painful to watch.
This is exactly what Howard Stern did to him. This is where he learned this. Howard Stern went in and bulldozed him on his own show.
Because we need what you do. This is such a great opportunity you have here to actually get politicians off of their marketing and strategy. Yeah, it's someone who watches your show and cannot take it anymore. I just can't.
What's it like to have dinner with you? It must be excruciating. Do you lecture people like this? Or do you come over to their house and sit and lecture them and they're not doing the right thing, that they're missing their opportunities, evading their responsibilities?
If I think they are.
Look, I wouldn't want to eat with you, man. That's horrible.
I know, and you won't. But the thing I want to get to...
We did promise naked pictures of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, we did. No. Let's get to those.
Why can't we just talk? Please, I beg of you guys.
I think you watch too much Crossfire. We're going to take a quick break.
No. Look,
hold on.
Please.
We've got commercials.
Please.
Next,
Please stop.
In the rapid fire.
Please stop. Now he's pleading. Now he's being the man with the moral compass. Asking for just a reasonable change in attitude to better the world. This guy is such a frigging nothing. I just saw him a few days ago. I just saw his Twitter feed as well, saying a bunch of years ago I called Tucker Carlson a dick. I apologize to dicks everywhere. Wow, Jon Stewart, that was really never heard that template joke before whatsoever. God, I hate that guy.
Yeah, I'm very serious, and it's very important that you guys take the news very seriously. Also, you wear a bow tie, burn. That's the whole thing.
You should have gone to journalism school. Ha ha.
Yeah, I mean,
God.
But it is interesting because I think it's interesting that this is such a seminal moment for so many people in terms of how they view news. And I think that like people my age anyway, when I was like in high school, thought that this was very cool when it happened. And they thought Jon Stewart was very cool, and most of them got most of their news information from the Daily Show.
Yes.
That was the newsiest thing they were exposed to at any time. And you know, and obviously it's not the same as watching like C-SPAN, but it's much newsier than watching like The Man Show or something, right? Which is, that's the thing, is that was like the smart dumb person's thing to watch, right?
Oh, totally.
Like,
I remember a kid when I worked in hotels. It must have been around 26 or 27 years old, and you know, I'd been a fan at this point. I was, you know, in my nerdy conservative time. I had been reading William F. Buckley, and I just gotten into Ann Coulter because of impeachment. I was all excited, and Krauthammer and Howie Carr and all these people, and I'd been watching, you know, old firing lines and this and that, whatever. And I wasn't an oracle of knowledge, but I was playing in the arena. Maybe the shallow end, fine, but you know, I was, and I remember the guy, the security guard, saying, "Hey, Tom, you know what you need to do? You seem to be really into politics. You need to start watching the Daily Show with Jon Stewart." And I was like, "Go fuck yourself! Why the frig would I take the step from William F. Buckley to some freaking clown washout from MTV? God, you need to go watch it. Really? That's what you're doing with your life? That's where you're getting your knowledge, your political compass from that?"
But that being said, I mean, I think the existence of Stewart and that form of like news comedy blend has given rise to like Steven Crowder and even to a degree to things like Ben Shapiro. I mean, I know Ben Shapiro is not comedy, but sort of this stuff that we know isn't like hard news reporting like CNN, but is commentary and is interesting. Even the Burn Barrel, I would put in that space probably, where we talk about the news, but we're not reporters per se. We're not, and I think that a lot of people, you know, prefer to listen to news personalities and people talking about stuff, people that they feel they know and have a relationship with. And I think that Jon Stewart was a big part of that sort of.
He was not a force for positivity whatsoever.
I don't know
he sucked.
Well, okay, but I think that space is a lot of those young people that watch Jon Stewart space. I think that form of entertainment, sort of newsy entertainment, for a lot of young people that, you know, are my age or even younger, like Zoomers, is now being taken up by like YouTube videos where there are a lot of conservatives in that sort of, now I'm afraid to say space, in that medium of news, entertainment news.
You can have your buddy Jon Stewart and
he's not my buddy. I never watched
Stephen
the
Colbert
show.
Is your other guy. You can have him as well. And
I just want to take a moment to drink you in.
He says to former President Obama. And the woman who called Ivanka Trump a feckless whatever.
Right. But
and,
I mean, I guess my point is,
John Oliver, you can have him too. I think they're all freaking idiots.
I don't watch them,
morons.
but I think I don't mind news that has an opinion. I don't mind activist news. I almost think it's good. Like, I'd rather have.
I don't mind that either, but just stand up and declare what you are and be that one thing, and don't bob and weave when somebody's engaging with you on your ideas. You know who I like better than Jon Stewart? Kalunda Jenkins.
I don't know.
She has 18 names. This is one of them. She is the woman who yelled at the cop yesterday. She's being outed now in the dark corners of social media.
Harassed today because I was going under the speed limit. I was going at 38.
Yes, you are, ma'am. Good morning.
And the speed limit is 40, and I was going 38, so why are you harassing me?
You're correct. I pulled you over because
you're a murderer. Yes, I started to record because you're a murderer.
You can't be on your cell phone while you're driving.
I wasn't on my phone. I was recording you because you scared me.
You can't use your cell phone while you're recording.
I can record you.
May I have your driver's license?
It's at my apartment.
What's your apartment?
It's at my home. I'm just taking my son to his.
Do you have your driver's license?
I mistakenly left it at home.
Do you have a picture of your driver's license?
Yes, I do.
May I have it?
He should have pulled her right in.
And can you call your supervisor, please?
I already did. He's on his way.
He already did, Kalunda. He had a feeling that you'd be calling him a murderer. And she is a professor at a college. We are not surprised. Los Angeles Southwest College. She is a professor. Alice, where this person...
And so you're giving me a cell phone ticket? Is that why you're harassing me?
Not harassment. I am enforcing the law.
I have a right to record the police when they're harassing me.
By all means, but you can't do it while you're driving.
I wasn't texting or none of that.
Do you have that
you
picture?
Scared me and made me think you were going to murder me.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Well, that's not just a feeling. You're a murderer.
Okay. Can you zoom in on that for me,
Sure.
dear? Thank you.
And I'm perfectly legal, and I'm a teacher. So there.
Congratulations.
Murderer.
She's a teacher.
You're a murderer.
What's your last name? I can't see that there.
Well,
If
here you
stop,
go,
Stop
murderer.
shaking. Zoom in on that for me,
No,
ma'am.
because you're scaring me.
Oh,
You're threatening to kill me and my son.
This person who's not threatening to kill her son, this woman, this professor, makes $100,000 a year. $100,000 this idiot is paid. That's
teach
far less
children.
than Jon Stewart was paid to teach children, but she gets paid $100,000 a year.
Is this your car?
Yes, it is. And you're trying to say I stole my own car because you're jealous?
Yeah,
Is that what
I don't
that's
think
about?
so. You wait for me right here, okay?
You're jealous?
You know, this guy could have just tased her, and like nobody watching social media would have any problem with it.
Citation. All you need to do is your signature. He's only citing you for using your cell phone while you're driving. That's it.
There you go, ma'am. Sign inside the red box right there.
For him being a Mexican racist. What is that name? Gas.
It's on the citation, ma'am.
Here you go, Mexican racist. You're always going to be a Mexican. You'll never be white. You know that, right? You'll never be white, which is what you really want to be.
There you go,
be
dear.
White.
Have a good day.
You want to be white so bad.
There is your progressive coastal academia. Congratulations, parents, paying for that idiocy. And
You know what? Maybe we should just get rid of the police in some of these communities.
You want to be...
I'd be fine with
yes, you want to be... you're Mexican, but you'll always be white. But you know what today, Alice? As you would say, today we're all Mexican. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
I know. Do you remember the great taco bowl? The Trump Tower taco bowl scandal of 2016?
For a lot of people, that sealed the deal. They were going to vote for the guy. That was fantastic. Joe Biden, also no stranger to Mexican food.
President, what'd you get? Tacos and some enchiladas. Mr. President, do you have any comments on the efforts to oust Liz Cheney from the House Republican leadership post? I don't understand the Republicans.
I understand the Republicans, he says, because it's Cinco de Mayo, goes and gets Mexican food. Yeah. Okay.
But Trump was a racist for ordering a taco bowl on Cinco de Mayo. And actually, I have an important article here about how we are supposed to celebrate and not celebrate Cinco de Mayo.
Before we get there, I just want to let you know that he said the follow-up question, and the reporter was leading him in, of course, when he was drawing him in.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he asked about the food. Then he followed up quickly while Biden was still talking with the stuff about Liz Cheney. But Pelosi had something to say about another Cheney.
I do commend Lynn Cheney for her courage, for her patriotism, and I wish her well.
Now, Lynn Cheney is Dick Cheney's wife, but Pelosi doesn't seem to recall that it's Lynn Cheney who's in the Congress fighting with Republicans for her political life. Go ahead, Else.
So WBUR has re-upped their article from 2019 and reposted it again, telling us to please don't wear a sombrero. What Cinco de Mayo really means from a Mexican. A couple of years ago, Danique Montique, a black student walking at the University of New Hampshire, noticed several white students wearing sombreros and ponchos. It was May 5th. She recorded the students and told them she felt their flippant use of Mexican garb amounted to cultural appropriation.
Yes.
The students Montique confronted became defensive, and a shouting match ensued. She uploaded the altercation on social media.
Thank God she did that.
White supremacy grabs and grabs lands, peoples, continents, culture for both power and hollow amusement. What about the innocuous celebration of cultures outside your own? Can't well-meaning white folks just have a bowl of guacamole and some beer on Cinco de Mayo without being accused of appropriating? Well, of course, they say. Oh, thank you very much for allowing us to eat guacamole.
One bowl. You can't wear a sombrero, which is what a mariachi actually wears. It's an actual thing because the mariachi community will be hurt. Okay. Over and above that, we have Samantha Guthrie talked to Dr. Fauci today. Before we get to the interview with Dawn Duncan, Samantha Guthrie, do you have other items that you want to air before we get to Savannah Guthrie talking to Fauci?
No, that's okay. We can do that.
Okay, so we'll do Fauci, and then if there's something during this that you want to get to, we'll do that afterwards, and then we're going to get to Dawn Duncan. We're going to talk to her. Okay.
Do you have Rochelle Walensky on, too, or are we just doing Fauci today?
I just have Fauci today. So this is Savannah Guthrie talking to Dr. Fauci. Watch how she just shimmies him along like an ice hockey puck with her hockey stick. He starts in one place. By the end of the interview, he's in a totally different place.
And let me stay on the subject of kids, because summer camps are coming up, and a lot of parents are looking forward to sending those kids out and hoping they have a great summer since they weren't able to last summer. But the CDC guidelines right now for kids in summer camp say masks must be worn at all times, even outdoors, by everyone, including vaccinated adults and children as young as 2 years old, and campers should stay 3 feet apart, even outdoors. My question to you is, given what research shows about transmission outside, about the low risk of serious illness in children, are these CDC guidelines excessive?
You know, I wouldn't call them excessive, Savannah, but they certainly are conservative.
Remember that. I wouldn't call them excessive.
and I think what you're going to start to see is really in real time continually reevaluating that for its practicality. Because you're right. People look at that and they say, well, is that being a little bit too far right now?
Yeah, because aren't we supposed to be, we've been told, people have been preaching for a year, follow the science. The science doesn't suggest those CDC guidelines are too sensible for little kids outside in 90-degree heat running around with masks.
Yes, Savannah, you've asked me that question a couple of times before.
I'm asking for 2 kids named Vale and Charlie, age 6 and 4.
Yeah, well, you're right. The CDC makes decisions based on science. They will continually reevaluate that. You're right. It looks a bit...
You're right. It's excessive, even though I just said I wouldn't call it excessive.
Strict, a bit stringent.
A bit excessive.
But that's the reason why they keep looking at that and trying to, reevaluate on literally in real time whether or not that's the practical way to go.
I wouldn't call that excessive. It's certainly excessive. Thank you, Dr. Fauci. $417,000 per year. Before we get to our interview and any housekeeping from Alice, I just want to go to a TikToker who's got another problem with us. She's called Emily, I assume, Artgrave. I don't even know. But anyway, there's a new rule for you. You screwed up again. She doesn't want you doing something that you thought was perfectly reasonable. But she's got 1,000 billion, quadrillion, quintillion nerve endings on her little woke head, so we have to look out and walk on eggshells.
So I work in customer service, and all day long I hear, "Excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, miss, excuse me, ma'am." I need to make one thing fiddly figgy clear. I am not a ma'am. I am not a sir. What I am is several crows and ravens in a trench coat trying to sneak their way into a McDonald's. What I am is a fat raccoon struggling to get out of a garbage can. What I am
is an a-hole.
Is a possum making my way downtown to commit tax fraud. I am 80% rage and 20% Velveeta cheese. I'm a decaying Victorian mansion housing several ghosts and probably a vampire. So I don't want to hear Miss ever again. Ah!
Unfortunately, that was not her driving off a cliff at the end. I think she just went to her retail job and continues for another day. But that is the extremely self-important zillennial generation doing what they find useful and doing it passionately. Great.
We had another important advice column from Slate, Karen Feeding, in which one parent wonders how to help their son through a crisis of masculinity. She writes, "Dear Karen Feeding, my son is 14 and he's coping with identity issues that I could really use some advice about. Last night he was complaining about English class. All we talk about is stuff like, I don't know, how women are so great and can defend themselves. Alarm bells, right? I probed a little and he started getting upset. He talked about the girls in his class being aggressive towards the boys, accusing them of he wasn't sure what, mumbled a few things about sexism and the patriarchy, you know, this whole kill all men thing, and with that he burst into tears. I'm white, I'm male, and I'm probably straight. He sobbed. At 14, he maintains the jury is still out on the last one.
Great.
It's like, I can't say anything. And the girls, they can say anything they like. Of course, we talked about those girls being out of line, but also how real sexism is. That he can be proud of who he is and support feminism and Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ rights, etc. at the same time. And ignore purposely provocative stuff like kill all men. Still, I'm concerned. My feeling is he's pretty well inoculated against racist and homophobic propaganda, but clearly he's struggling with his masculinity. I really worry that he might stumble across a few clever Jordan Peterson videos and end up falling down some nasty male power incel rabbit hole.
Jordan Peterson.
Do you have any advice on how to deal with this? In particular, do you know of any good age-appropriate books or podcasts or shows that deal with these topics in a sensitive way, in a way that's in sync with feminist values?
Yeah, have them start reading Teen Vogue. And
yeah.
So I have advice for them, but none of it is anything you should probably say. I've already wished death upon about 8 people so far.
I'm most impressed that this mom has somehow convinced her son that he may not be straight. He's not sure.
Yeah, it's not something a teenage boy knows.
He's going to have to come out to his mom eventually that he's straight. The fact that The fact that he's hinting by saying he's probably straight, it tells you right there that he knows he's going to have to become uncloseted soon to his mom, who's going to be disappointed.
Yes, well, this is, this zillennial adjacent vicarious mother is not going to be satisfied even if he says he's gay. She's going to have to be some special advanced form of trans X QIA, whatever it is. I don't know. I know there's more letters.
In other news about zillennials, another TikToker posed a very hypothetical question this week in which she wondered what it would be like if Tim Burton decided to direct any superhero movies like Batman or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So that was an impressive lack of Googling happening with that zillennial. But
speaking of that, Tim Burton obviously directed Edward Scissorhands, played by Johnny Depp, who played Boston. What's the guy's name? Who played the guy in Blow? The guy from Boston Joe or something, maybe Boston Joe.
Okay.
In a great role, the best role of Depp's life, and that guy Boston Joe, that drug dealer, has died today at around 78 people. So shall we get to our interview now, Alice?
We can get to the interview.
Okay, this is Dawn Duncan. Okay, yesterday as we talked about what Rick Santorum said, and then the larger issue of Native American contributions, it was a new conversation for us, and you people listening right now know that. So Alice and I tried to work through it, but it was a new conversation. Like, what groups have contributed to the country, and apart from what Santorum said and the explosive nature and all the fallout, etc., we wanted to speak somebody who could speak on behalf of Native Americans. And because this is, to me, this is all new. I can get you can look at the historic timeline of this, that, etc. So I want to go through this with our guest today, who is Dawn Duncan, and she is a board member from the Mass Center for Native American Awareness. Dawn, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, Dawn, this is really a learning opportunity for us. So first I want to play a long cut of what Santorum said, and I'll let you take a whack at that after I do that.
If you think about this country, I don't know of any other country in the world that was settled predominantly by people who were coming to practice their faith. They came here because they were not allowed to practice their particular faith in their own country, and so they came here mostly from Europe, and they set up a country that was based on Judeo-Christian principles. If you think of other countries like Italy and Greece and China and Turkey and places like that, they've all sort of changed over time. I mean, they've been there for millennia in many cases, and their culture has sort of evolved over time. But not us. We came here and created a blank slate. We birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there's nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, that there isn't much Native American culture in American culture.
So once again, let me just play bridge short to the point part that's where we are interested in.
We birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there's nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, that there isn't much Native American culture in American culture.
Okay, Dawn Duncan, I assume as a board member of Mass Center for Native American Awareness and as somebody who is a Native American herself, that you ain't okay with that.
I would agree with you. I am definitely not okay with that.
So him saying that before we came here, there was nothing here. Obviously, that is, and he did apologize and try to walk it back, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, there was something here, including human beings, Native Americans. But what I'm interested in is the second part of that. When he said, and I'll play it again.
We birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there's nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, that there isn't much Native American culture in American culture.
So speak to that. Just educate us. Where is there Native American culture in current American culture?
There is a ton of Native American culture in current culture, but I would first even step back and say that his statement about saying that that the nation was birthed from nothing is utterly false, and that also shows a severe lack of awareness, education, and things historically. But the reality is the Six Nations is the oldest living participatory democracy on earth, and the United States was largely birthed from this democracy concept, which didn't come out of nowhere. It literally came from the Native Americans. And there are, if you do even a little research,
so Dawn, but to say that would be denying that the Enlightenment was a major leading influence, if not the guiding influence.
Not sure what you mean by the Enlightenment.
Like John Locke and English common law and sort of these ideas that come from the European Renaissance and European like post-medieval values sort of that informed a lot of the founders' ideas about individual rights and freedoms and government coming from the consent of the governed and these types of ideas that we typically think of as being sort of the founding principles of the country. But it sounds like what you're saying is that there's more continuity there with Native American systems of government that existed prior to colonists ever coming here than we normally think of.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I do agree with what you're saying as well, that there's definitely some things that came from, of course, European culture, but so much of it was based on, I guess the way I look at it too, is the idea of democracy. And like stories I heard growing up of people coming from, say, England and other countries where they were trying to kind of escape the lack of having, their own say. If you come somewhere new, you don't necessarily have a frame of reference for that. So if you come to another place and you find that there are people already living here who actually have that frame of reference in the form of the democracy, it's something that you can more easily buy into. So I look at it as more of, yes, a combination of people coming here and learning from those who are already living here. So
one of the things that I think is provably true, certainly, is that if the charter of this country, let's say the creation and the establishment of the actual United States for the Continental Congress, sure, if that wasn't borrowed directly or influenced heavily by Native Americans, certainly the very survival of those people in Philadelphia was dependent upon Native Americans, especially in the beginning. So is that a point that could be made to say that Native Americans did have an absolute hand in the creation of the country before they were considered citizens of the country?
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. I would agree with that. And a lot of historical information will show that, yes, Native Americans often helped the settlers who many times didn't have the skills or knowledge of the land or the ability to probably survive without the help of a lot of Native Americans. So, yes.
So I want to make sure, Alice, does that make sense to you, or am I, because Dawn's so likable, am I going to am I saying more tougher things when she's not in front of us than I am now?
I mean, I guess, so kind of what we had talked about yesterday when we were initially talking about these comments too, was kind of talking about the fact that, there has been not a loss of Native American culture, but certainly post-Columbian exchange, in part because of the diseases that racked Native American civilizations for many years after first contact, but then also because of sometimes assimilation or sometimes, pure just violence from between colonists and Native Americans, that a lot of Native American culture has been lost to time in some ways. And that's not unique to Native Americans. I mean, it happens in ancient Greek and Roman literature too. Some of this stuff gets lost. But I think that, one of the things that comes up a lot in the mascot debates and stuff is people saying that thinking of it that way makes us believe that Native Americans aren't still here and aren't still an existing living people that exist. And so maybe that's, part of what the Rick Santorum thing, why that bothered people. But I think that that's like a common thing that we think of is that, the American country was founded in the 17th and 18th centuries. And can you elaborate a little bit for us on how you see that cultural continuity, coming from what existed here, all those civilizations that were here beforehand, how you see that coming through when you look at the beginning of what we now think of as the American nation? Like, what aspects of Native American culture do you see continuing forward?
Sure. Well, I think it's like you said, there were a lot of complicated forces that destroyed, like literally killed a lot of Native Americans. I'm a public health person, so my background's in public health. And I do know that over 99% of Native Americans died from communicable diseases like smallpox before even Columbus ever settled, made it to, he never made it to actually America. That's a whole other story, but where he ended up. So those things are very real. There was a huge destruction literally of Native American people. That's very true. But I think the way that what I think about when I think of how things have survived and thrived is a lot of cultural beliefs and things have survived through, small numbers of members of tribes that have survived. There are a lot of things that were created by Native Americans that are still very common in our society. I actually do a presentation. I have like a workshop called Native American Contributions to Society. And some of them are just like, even like Native American medicine was very advanced. Like Native Americans had intricate surgical procedures, anesthetics for like doing surgery and things like that. Some like mundane things like bunk beds and like chewing gum and oral contraception. There's all these things that were created by Native Americans that have actually stayed as a through line through our society and are still here today. But a lot of people don't really know about them because we only think about it kind of in the frame of our of how we look at the United States. But a lot of those things have been here, and also in Native culture, there's a certain thing of nobody really owns the land or property, just the way we view the world. So there's ways that a colonizing society that comes in and kind of takes over can take over in ways because it's a different value system, right? Yes. So things just kind of get shoved under the table or not acknowledged because it's a different worldview as well.
Right, and that's the core issue, right? That was the core source of the friction.
Yes,
was the idea of property rights, etc. And when locally treaties were made, the white settler makes a treaty with one tribe, and then other white settler comes from Denmark, doesn't know the first white settler, and has it cares not for that treaty, and so it was no coordination in the slow takeover of the country. But I thought it was interesting, Don, that you said that that the smallpox had really devastated the Native American population far before Columbus. So do you contend that it wasn't from the West, the smallpox?
Well, from the West,
no, I'm saying, were these from explorers who spread the smallpox here? I know that's a big hypothesis that it came from Europe.
Yes, I do believe. I mean, from everything that I've read, it did come from Europe. It's just that it was so extensive that many more Native Americans were wiped out even before, because the way we tend to teach history and things, it's everybody learns about, quote, Columbus. So that's like this theme that's like embedded in all of our education. But there was a lot that happened way before that. But a lot of it was still European, yes. But it was just that I think the impact and the number of Native Americans that were decimated was like really, really, really huge. And a lot of people don't.
No, I don't think a lot of people know that. And
a lot of people don't know. So,
that was shocking, and that certainly plays into the some of the early stronger relationships that in Plymouth that the settlers had with Native Americans. There was a symbiosis because they needed each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right, because where they settled, the reason why they've renamed that the Plymouth Patuxet, that thing, is because there was an abandoned village there, but it was already, that particular village was already abandoned when the Pilgrims came, is my understanding. Dawn probably knows how correct I am or not, but, and a lot of that was because diseases had already spread that far from Central America, and it just devastated huge populations of people by that time.
Yeah.
Hey, so Dawn, I want to ask you, before we let you go, and thank you so much, I want to ask you a question that's off topic, but it's just nice to talk to you, so I'm going to ask it anyway. I grew up in Winchester, Massachusetts. Our mascot was the Sachems. We now live up here in Pentucket, Massachusetts, where our mascot was the Sachems, but both town councils or whatever, school committees have voted those names gone. Somehow, two things. One, the Sachems are great, and it's a strong chief, and it's like these are fierce warriors that were strong, and I think to me that's like a great way to honor these incredibly fierce warriors in competition, and it's a positive thing. We know that obviously, just like with any ethnicity or whatever, it's not all warriors. There are inventors and thinkers and writers, etc. What's wrong with loving those mascots? How is that not a positive tribute?
I think. Yeah, I understand where people are coming from when they say that. I think the issue is, it's the issue of what they call cultural appropriation, so that it's really not about whether you, and I don't mean you personally, but whether the people who have created this kind of society and system says, well, we think this is cool and we're honoring you. But on the other hand, the people who've been oppressed don't really have a say in it. It's not coming from like a participatory thing. It's more from the basis of the, quote, dominant culture. So I think that's a lot of it. And that is what you call cultural appropriation, where you're not actually engaging with the people of the culture before you just go use something that might be, and it might be sacred to them. It might be something where you might think it's a cool word and be like, well, I think this is a strong image and a chief and all. And like, okay, but we might think, well, yes, that's true, but that's sacred and you aren't part of our community, so you don't get to do that. It's more, so it's like multi-layered, I think.
Right.
But that's why people get offended by it. It's because it's this appropriation without really engaging with the community to really even ask their opinion, if you could use their symbol.
So is most of the offense taken due to the fact that they weren't asked, or due to the fact that there's Sachems images?
I think it depends. I think it's a combination. I think it's both. Some people would be more offended of not being asked. Some would be from the symbolism. Some would be from just making like money and things from the use of these symbols. Some of them, the caricatures are very like stereotypical, so they're not like, there's not a lot of nuance. So I think, and I don't know there's one absolute answer to that. It depends. There are people I know who are in the Native community and they're like, stop, we don't care. Like use whatever mascot you want. They don't get offended by it. And that's their, that's they're right.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because I know there's so much of a mix of different polling on this. There will be one poll that says a lot of people are offended and one poll that says almost nobody's offended. And, and sometimes these mascots have a complex history. I know the Wakefield just got rid of their Warriors mascot, and that particular mascot logo was designed by a Native American man who lived in Wakefield. And so, but people were concerned about it that, that's not what other people were seeing when they were looking at it. So sometimes it's a permission thing, and sometimes it seems like it's that, like you said, it's more layered or complex, that sometimes Native Americans are involved in choosing or designing these mascots and logos, and people still are bothered by them.
And ultimately, I think it's about awareness. And Mass Center for Native American Awareness, we're very clear that we do not support Native American mascots, and we think that they should be eliminated. But we, I think we also every step forward and toward increased awareness is a good thing. So we appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us. I've got to say that I think probably that we are both on the polar opposite political side, not on everything, that probably the Mass Center for Native American Awareness is. I mean, small. You know what? Maybe we aren't actually. But on the logo stuff, etc. And it's funny because my the people who I'm opposed to on this are not the Native American spokesman. It's the suburban rich white people who decide to take up little hobbies while they're in vogue on Facebook and then abandon them. And they're not going to give any money to a reservation where there's an opioid addiction and there's they're struggling with alcoholism and unemployment. They're just happy to take up all the virtue that's happening in the logo debate.
Yes. That's a fair criticism. I understand that.
But I got to say that you've been great to talk to, and this we thought that this interview could go a couple of ways. We thought that either we could all get along, or we'd just be we wouldn't shout, but it could be just loggerheads. But your willingness to simply, in a friendly, cordial manner, have a nice discussion is fantastic, and I love that that's happening in places. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so my thoughts on that interview. I was taken aback by how nice she was. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if, because of that, if we were too soft on her, or if we just conceded too many points.
Well,
but
I think
was
we
reasonable.
asked her on to hear what she had to say about it, because we know, correct, and you guys know, all you listening out there, what we said about this yesterday, what our opinion on it is. And I mean, like, could we have pushed back more? Like, I don't know that I necessarily believe that there's as much continuity between Native American civilizations and the United States that she does. And I'm not sure that's saying that, we have taken some medical knowledge like aspirin from willow bark from Native Americans that like proves that the Constitution was based on Native American systems of government or something.
Now you're a big tough guy with the salvos.
But this is what I'm saying. It's like we invited her on to hear her thoughts on it and how she feels about it. So, and not to be totally antagonistic. Mm-hmm. So do I disagree with a few of the things she said? Like, yeah, but am I going to convince her by telling her that? I mean,
I commend her for coming on. I thought that she was great and pleasant to talk to and interesting. Mm-hmm. And so I liked her. And, I think it's...
I like hearing what other people think. And sometimes you can't find out what other people think if you yell at them.
But if you have a critique of... feel free to give it to us at burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. I thought it was cool, and I thought she was great to talk to. With that, Alice, I think we're about at that time.
Well, did you want to talk about, is her name Michaela Miller? What's the
girl's name? Well, okay. So, Michaela Miller is a young lady in Hopkinton who was killed. She was 16 years old.
She may have killed herself.
So this is why I actually kind of backed off against this. I watched the entire Greater Boston interview. She was 16 years old, Michaela Miller. She was a young black girl. She was also trans somehow. I don't know.
No, she
what.
was not trans. She's
LGBTQ.
Yeah, so she was dating a girl. And she broke up with the girl, and that's the group of kids that she had the fight with, was that girl.
Okay, in a common area of their apartment complex.
Right.
So they had this fight. Cops came. The kids all left. Then the story from the cops is that, or the contention, it looks like, a little while later, she was found either hanging from a tree or tied to a tree, depending on what news account you hear.
Right.
Now, some people think that she was tied to a tree from her neck, where that's how she asphyxiated herself. But we don't know. It's a terrible story.
The medical examiner report isn't out yet, so there's no current manner or cause of death that anyone has.
And so on one of the TV shows in Boston here, a local activist, now it's become a thing. It's a Black Lives Matter thing, essentially. A local activist named Monica Cannon Grant, who's a racist herself, a black supremacy believer who said some gross and disgusting things. She's got this thing going with Ibram Kendi and whatever. They're all gonna have they're having a protest. She thinks it's murder. She thinks she was murdered.
Or lynched. I'm seeing the word lynched thrown around.
And that's so far there's no reason to believe that. Monica Cannon Grant is a disgusting person for the stuff she says and her belief system anyway. And obviously an opportunist, and everybody's afraid of her, so the city's given her her own whatever. So now they're having a peace sit-in, whatever it is, tomorrow over this thing where this girl very possibly hung herself, which is terrible, and it's awful for the family. She seems to be the pretty young person with the whole world in front of her. Maybe she had some mental health issues. I mean, obviously, I guess she hung herself, then she did. But
we don't know what happened.
Right. So the problem is it's hard to be being considered a race crime in the left and BLM and Monica Cannon Grant and all those psychos are now saying, oh, this is absolute murder. She was murdered, lynched, murdered. And so I think they're way the hell out of bounds saying that, and this is a terrible thing to say at this time right now.
And not only that...
Let me just finish.
Okay.
That said, I think the DA is moving freaking slowly, and I was not satisfied by what I saw the DA, Marion Riley, say about this today. She didn't seem to know why the medical examiner was taking so long. She wouldn't tell us if this person seemed to have hung themselves or not. There didn't seem to be much information. The outreach to the family seemed to be fairly slow. And if you've got a family here that's looking for answers, and I'm not surprised that our DA is falling down on the job because these are Massachusetts bureaucrats, and they do. So I don't. It's like one of the reasons I didn't grab any audio from this is because I don't really have a position on it yet. I don't like what I'm seeing from either side.
I agree with that. I think it's frustrating when everybody jumps in with a narrative before the facts are even established, and you see this with the mass shooting stuff too, that everybody decides to pick their side and what they think a story means before anybody knows what actually happened. I do think that an aspect of the story that is getting underreported and under-discussed is potentially the fact that this is related to intimate partner violence and domestic violence between her and this other young woman that she was dating, where we know that that same-sex couples experience domestic violence in rates at least as high, and a lot of studies suggest possibly even more high than in heterosexual couples. And there's a lot of explanations for that, like, internalized misogyny or whatever.
Yeah, but wasn't it 5-on-1?
Yeah, but one of the 5 was her former partner that they had just broken up.
Well, what about the other 4 then, including 2 men?
Well,
I think the men were Hispanic. The girls were...
Okay, but I don't know. Were they her relatives or something? I don't know. So I don't know that aspect of the story, but I do know that one of the people that was involved in this altercation was an intimate partner that she had, that they had just broken up. And we know that that is the most likely time when people experience domestic violence and intimate partner violence is when they try and break off a relationship. That's the highest time. And I think that we need to be, and I think that sometimes domestic violence is perceived as being a heterosexual thing, like a men versus women thing. And so we don't realize that, you know, young people are at risk of this even if they're in, you know, non-heterosexual relationships, and that is something that we like need to talk to kids about and need to be aware of. And if this was a part of this, or it's possible that, you know, that she did kill herself or was pushed into suicide by this, I don't know, but I mean, I think that that's an aspect of the story that also needs to be investigated and looked at, because I think that based on what we know about, you know, when and how murders happen, I think it's more likely that this is related to domestic violence than that it's a race crime. You know, because we know that intimate partners kill. I mean, that's like if anybody who watches any crime show, you know, it's always the husband or the boyfriend,
right.
and same-sex couples experience the same problems. When people are in intimate relationships and emotions are running very high, that's when you do experience domestic violence, and a lot of murders and crimes of passion and things take place at these times when people are, you know, running very high tension about some of these issues. So I think that that's something that that we may find out more about as we go along here, and then I don't think that should be discounted in favor of making it a race narrative right off the bat, which I don't think we have enough evidence right now to say that it is a race crime, if it even is a crime by somebody else. I mean, clearly, when she was assaulted in her apartment building, that clearly constitutes a crime, but I don't think we know that her death was a crime by somebody or not at this point in time.
Correct. So we'll see. And tomorrow or today for you, there's the rally, and then hopefully more information comes forward before we've got a full conflagration here, which is the way things have been going.
Thanks so much for listening. As always, everybody, it's been great. This is the Burn Barrel Podcast at Burn Barrel Pod on Twitter or burnbarrelpodcast.com. We're also at facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast or on Gab and Parler at Burn Barrel Podcast. We also have a YouTube channel, Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel, on there, or you can shoot us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us, write us a review, leave some comments, let us know you're out there listening. It's always great to hear from you.